"If you can't give me a grandchild, then we should consider divorce," Jones declared. I hesitated for a moment before responding, "Fine, I got it." But just as he was about to finalize his decision, I surprised him with the news. I am pregnant. You see, I'm a homemaker in my 30s, living with my husband Jones, who works in an office. Our love story began when I was working at a food-related company. Over time, we spoke many times regarding transactions, and I found myself falling for his occasional smiles. So I decided to take the initiative and propose a relationship. However, when I proposed, Jones rejected me saying, "I'm sorry, I appreciate your feelings, but I already have a girlfriend." Yet destiny had other plans. A month later, he approached me, admitting, "I broke up with my girlfriend, and I would like to be with you." Apparently, since my confession, he couldn't stop thinking about me, which eventually led to his breakup with his girlfriend. I felt guilty for causing their breakup, but Jones reassured me with a smile, saying, "Don't worry about it, it probably wouldn't have lasted long anyway." His kindness saved our budding relationship. After 3 years of being together, we got married. At that time, Jones expressed his desire to have children after marriage and asked if I could stay at home to support him and our future family. I wasn't particularly attached to my job at a somewhat toxic company, so I decided to quit and become a full-time homemaker. The transition from a working woman to a homemaker turned out to be more challenging than I expected. But I didn't mind because our newly life was sailing smoothly, and I was constantly brimming with happiness. We also had the advantage of Jones's family living just a 10-minute walk from our apartment. Initially, I worried about frequent visits and potential issues with his parents, but my fears were unfounded. They were incredibly kind and helpful, always ready to explain things to me gently and kindly. Despite our childlessness, they never complained, often telling me, "You are even dearer to us than a grandchild, and we only have boys in our family. We always wanted a daughter. Please let us pamper you like our real daughter." I had developed a strong bond with Jones's mother, Carol, and I trusted his father, Tom, who might be a man of few words, but he was incredibly reliable. However, this heartwarming relationship lasted only for the first few years. A few years into our marriage, the once kind attitude of Jones's parents began to change drastically. Gradually, Tom became even more reserved, and Carol underwent such a transformation that I began to suspect a dual personality within her. Perhaps this harsh version of her was her true self. To quantify her change, if she was once at a plus 100 before, now she seemed to be at minus 100. That's how harshly she treated me. Living nearby, she started visiting our house frequently, especially when Jones was absent, nagging me incessantly and urging me to show her the face of my grandchild. According to her, it was a wife's duty. She would rush me to have a child. Although not long ago, she used to say, "Children are a gift from heaven. You don't have to try hard. You'll conceive naturally when the time comes, so don't rush." However, her attitude had taken a complete U-turn. She began to pressure me by mentioning other families, saying things like, "The family over there recently had a baby, and the woman next door is pregnant. What about you?" But no matter how much she pressed me for a grandchild, it was all meaningless if Jones wasn't ready. Despite his initial desire for children at the start of our marriage, a year into it, he had completely lost interest. Even my attempts to initiate intimacy were met with rejection. He would decline, saying he was tired, or dismiss me saying, "Don't interrupt my gaming." When I tried to explain this to Carol, she didn't seem to understand and continued pressuring me to have a child, increasing my stress day by day. Unable to endure her relentless attacks any longer, I finally confided in Jones about the pressure I was facing to have a grandchild. He grumbled his response, saying, "I don't think we need to rush this, you know." Despite his reluctance, he agreed to increase our intimate time together as much as possible. Despite our joint efforts as a couple, getting pregnant seemed elusive. Moreover, throughout this time, Carol kept hurling insults at us, blaming our lack of success on our supposed lack of effort. At times, I suspected that the accumulated stress caused by her constant pressure might be making it even harder to conceive. Unable to withstand her relentless pressure any longer, I reached my breaking point. As a couple, we finally decided to undergo fertility treatments, hoping it would solve our struggles with conception. However, relief was short-lived as a new issue arose, one that centered around Jones. Ever since we embarked on the fertility treatment journey, he began to grow distant, retreating to his room to play video games immediately after returning from work, ignoring my attempts at conversation. Initially, I could tolerate his behavior, but it worsened over time. Jones became increasingly irritable, lashing out over small expenses related to my hobby, and unloading his work stress on me. Whenever I tried to defend myself, he would quickly lose his temper, emphasizing his role as the provider and labeling me a freeloader. No matter how many times I reminded him that I had quit my job to fulfill his wishes, he remained unyielding. One day, when he should have been going to work, I discovered he had quit without informing me. When I questioned him about it, he dismissively replied that it was none of my business. I felt a mix of disgust and helplessness. While I believed we could manage financially for a while through unemployment benefits and dipping into our savings, the fact that he showed no interest in finding a new job stressed me out immensely. With Jones spending his days at home, his main activities revolving around gaming and occasional trips to the convenience store, our face-to-face interactions increased significantly. However, instead of fostering affectionate moments, this newfound time together only intensified our arguments. Our discussions became strained, and gradually, we stopped talking altogether. I found myself questioning the purpose of continuing this married life. The once strong bond between us seemed to be eroding, and the realization slowly settled in that our marriage might be reaching its breaking point. I began contemplating an escape from the dismal situation. One day, utterly fed up with Jones idling away his time, playing games at home like a child, I confronted him. "You're not a kid. Stop playing games all the time and start looking for a job," I admonished him sternly. His response caught me off guard. "Oh, by the way, my mom told me that if we can't have a baby, we should get a divorce," he said casually. To my surprise, I felt a surge of gratitude towards Carol, something I never anticipated. After all, I was pregnant. I had discovered this during a recent checkup, planning to tell him that very night. However, now it seemed like the right decision not to disclose the news. With newfound determination, I said, "Okay, got it." I retrieved the already filled-out divorce papers from a drawer and handed them to him. He seemed taken aback, clearly not expecting me to agree to the divorce, let alone produce ready-to-sign papers. He stuttered and froze on the spot, his usual domineering attitude nowhere to be seen. He appeared dumbfounded. Though he seemed on the verge of saying something, the weight of his mother's words weighed heavily on him. Eventually, he reluctantly signed the divorce papers, continuously sneaking glances at me. Later, we gathered to discuss matters like property division. In reality, we didn't have much in terms of assets to worry about. While he had previously complained about my spending habits, it turned out he was the one with the more reckless financial behavior. He not only played games at home, but also spent significant amounts of money at game centers, depleting his finances. We had no savings or assets to split, and Jones realized this with growing dismay. Despite this, he pointed to a passbook with considerable savings, suggesting we divide that as well. However, I informed him that this savings account was not subject to property division. "This is the savings I accumulated before our marriage, so it is not part of property division," I explained calmly. His face paled even more. He then tried to claim rights over the condo we lived in. Unfortunately for him, the condo was in my name, and I had already put it up for sale. "You can't live here anymore. It would be a nuisance, so please leave immediately," I said with a smile. Besides, I thought this condo would become too small in the future, so I've been saving up for a new home, I added, watching his disbelief as I calmly asserted my independence. Saving money had always been my hobby, even when I had a regular job before marrying Jones. I had managed to save a significant amount, which I used to purchase this condo during a period of rapid advancement in my career. As a result, I owned substantial property. Even with the funds from selling the condo, I could afford to build a decent house downtown. Of course, all these assets were acquired during my single days, making them exempt from the current property division. It appeared my husband was unaware of this, as he seemed to believe he would be entitled to half of my assets. Upon realizing he wouldn't be part of the asset division, he was in a state of shock. We continued discussing, but he couldn't recover from his shock. With little left to discuss, the conversation ended swiftly. I submitted the divorce papers at the city office, and our divorce was finalized without a hitch. A few months later, I returned to my parents' home, where I received their unwavering support during the birth of my child. I safely delivered a healthy baby boy whom I named Ethan, a name borrowed from the Bible. Now, I spent my days contentedly with my loving child and parents. Of course, I hadn't informed Jones about our child, fearing Carol's interference if she found out. Meanwhile, Jones, who was evicted from the condo, retreated to his parents' home, but seemed to have become a recluse due to the shock of the easy agreement to the divorce. Occasionally, when he ventured out, his appearance seemed so suspicious that he often attracted the attention of law enforcement, making his situation quite pitiful. Later, I heard that he had quit his job due to interpersonal relationship issues. Apparently, he had a contentious attitude even at the office, especially disliked by female employees, leading to his isolation. Unable to cope, he abruptly quit one day. Perhaps he had always been that way, only showing kindness in front of me, a deceptive facade. 3 years later, I worked as the manager of a craft store, and it became a regular haunt for me. Around that time, the store owner approached me with an unexpected proposition. "I'm getting old and thinking of retiring. If it's all right with you, would you like to take over this store?" Considering my parents' active help with childcare, I had ample free time. The idea of having a job to keep myself occupied seemed appealing. Besides, declining the offer would inconvenience many regular customers, so I accepted without hesitation. As I was serving one of the occasional regular customers that day, I received an unexpected visit from Carol and Jones. Their thinly veiled flattery about the store irritated me. "Well, what brings you here?" I inquired. Carol mumbled something incomprehensible, eventually demanding, "Give my grandchild back to me." Evidently, she had learned about my child's birth and was contemplating making the child her heir. "Why did you keep it a secret?" "We were already in the process of divorcing," Jones accused, clearly agitated. "I kept quiet because I wanted the divorce. I knew you both would do anything to prevent it if you found out I was pregnant," I shot back, glaring at them. Carol persisted, insisting that I return her grandchild, emphasizing the 3 years we had spent together. Her demand left me utterly flabbergasted. Just then, my parents and Ethan entered the scene, sensing the tension. They asked, "What's the matter? Is there a problem?" It appeared that they hurried over after receiving a message from a regular customer. Spotting Ethan holding hands with my parents, Carol approached him, cooing, "Oh, how cute. He looks just like Jones when he was a child." "Look, I'm your grandma." I attempted to intervene, but Ethan, with surprising determination, declared, "I only have one grandma," and hugged my mother. Consequently, my mother politely asked Carol to leave. However, Jones attempted to forcibly take Ethan away from my parents, shouting, "Just give the kid to my mother." I stood in front of him, trying to protect Ethan, but my physical strength was no match for his. I was easily pushed aside. Jones was inches away from grabbing Ethan's arm when, out of nowhere, my father executed a perfect shoulder throw, sending Jones flying into the air. I looked up in astonishment to see my father, a skilled police officer who had even competed in national championships during his student days. Jones, completely unaware of my father's abilities, could only stare in pain and shock. My father, unfazed, said, "If you intend to bother my child and grandchild any further, I'm ready to take necessary actions. What do you want to do?" He showed his police badge to Carol, who turned pale, and they both hurried away. I never found out what happened to Carol and Jones after that, and frankly, I didn't want to know. Several years later, Ethan began aspiring to become a police officer, inspired by my father's courage and skills. "When I grow up, I'm going to be a police officer too, so I can protect Mom," he declared. Under my father's guidance, Ethan diligently worked on his studies, and his martial arts skills became unbeatable among his peers. I plan to continue watching over my wonderfully grown son, grateful for the support and protection my father had provided. Thank you for watching this video until the end. If you found the content relatable, please consider leaving a positive rating and a comment.